How's that, guys? Is that better? We have that sound back again? Sorry about that. Let's see, I've got the microphone working at this end. I just wanted to make sure. Yeah, there we go. Hey, yeah, that was a disturbance that came up just prior to me starting here, folks. So very sorry for the interference here, guys. So thank you so much for the input there. I noticed that my mic system here was running well, but couldn't understand why it wasn't kind of feeding through. So I went back to properties and had it all squared away there. So hey, thanks very much, gang. I just want to let you know, thanks, Lenny. You're going to have you on board. A long time no see, no hear. Hope all is well with you and your gang. But I just want to go back and a real brief overview here. But today's stream, a lot of conversation over the last few weeks about maybe doing a variant on this Manticore piece. So I brought back the original, and I thought it was interesting to start with. The variant I'd like to look at is maybe like a drop ship of some sort. That's maybe a supply carrier. And looking at that, I thought it was really interesting because I brought this original back because what I like to be able to hold on to when we're doing this exploratory sketch. If you approve of this approach, let me know. And if you want to abandon a carrier or some sort of a dropship system, I'm more than happy to go that route and call this a day and move into another subject matter for tomorrow's stream. But it might be worthwhile looking at something in terms of we've got situations or scenarios to work with there that could be very intriguing and open up a whole new door of approach for this Manticore process here. Notice we've got an upper wing system and a lower, an upper and lower engine system, both rights and lefts. We also have a dihedral series that are stabilizers in the back of this thing. We also have like a cannon boom or an extension military boom that holds the firepower at the tail section of this thing. What's interesting about this is what I'd like to look at is maybe putting something back in through, maybe with a hinge point or a docking station right back in this area here. They begin to move into that and open up this whole area back here with a whole new look in terms of being a drop ship. So with that thought in mind, keeping as much of the information as you possibly can without modifying too much, I want to go back and look at I did some little thumbnail studies here, and I just want to show you what we've got here. So we're going to switch over to, I did a whole series of, not a whole series, but just a series of little thumbnail sketches here in basic pencil variation, looking at possibilities of, this would be a plan view of the actual ship itself on the Manticore, and then this would be the docking area we talked about right through here. Then adding this module behind it, which could be a either certain geometric shapes or forms and so forth. And the rest of these little studies begin to look at variations on theme or what that drop ship module would look like. Maybe it's a supply system that goes from station to station to get things done. But I'm just wondering here, and I just really need your help here. Maybe I'm overthinking this thing too much in terms of maybe scale or complexity in the area of the docking device. This thing would feed in, for example, over the top. I'll show you in a moment here what I'm referring to. But this is a very, very beginning preliminary sketch of certain shapes and variations on theme for that variant to look at here. So let me stop there for a moment and just get your input on this thing. Should it be simple? Can it be more complex? Can it move away from the variation of the theme of the actual Manticore attack ship itself? These are questions I have, gang. What do you think? Any commentary, feedback at all before I move on to the next page here, please? Really appreciate your help. Because this is one of those situations where you get into where all of a sudden you've got a whole new look at the perspective or the prospect of doing a neat looking variant on a ship. But boy, how do you take it? And I really would appreciate your input, your expertise in this area to see what we've got. I think the simpler the better. But yeah, I think that's a good point, Chip. And I do mean simple in terms of simple as it connects to the actual vehicle itself, or simple in the forms, or is it a combination of both? What do you think? Also, making cargo variant of a combat ship is rather a non-starter. Yeah, I think that might be a good point too. So are you saying there, suggesting, Chip, that this whole new variant might be a whole different look based on the concept we're working with, or should we try and work with as many pieces as we can with the actual piece itself we've already finished? Anything at all on that? And there are two very different frames for very. Yeah, and I think that's the problem I've been having. I'm glad you brought that up too, Chip. That's the difficulty I've been experiencing over trying to look at the actual original here, and there's such a fresh look at the actual sketch itself. Here's an actual fresh look at what we've done here as far as the combat variation goes. And if you try to put that into some sort of a variant or some sort of a process where it becomes a cargo ship of some sort, very difficult thing to do, I think. I think simple in design works because of the loading and unloading. Yeah, no question, Linear. That's part of the process as well. So I think I think the simplicity, these are very overdone. These are very first starts at it, and just went over the edge in terms of trying to look at what we could do with this thing. So I went from that variation to, let's kind of go back and just go down the line there with some of this stuff. So there's a second one. I was looking at an elevation of the actual body form itself that we've already established, and just these are real rapid little elevation studies. The cockpit area, and then the ramp area, and then this would be the docking module area here. At the tail end of that, the cockpit itself, we could have some storage attached to the frame or extra fuel for yeah, that's a good point too. Not a bad idea, and I think that might be a good point too, Chip. The thing I'm looking at with your comment here, and also with Linear's comment, is maybe we hold that combat stem and just graft off of that and put some really simple shapes in there that do not interfere with the aerodynamics or the actual process we've already established. So that's an interesting thing to look at here. So these are just two quick little studies on base on, do you want to go with a very simple docking station where it plugs in, or is it one of those attachments that comes over the top and begins to clamp in and attach to the actual module itself in the cockpit area. So that's another sketch there we work with. There's that guy. Now let's just put these out of the way here for a second, then we'll keep this avenue open. Third, we're looking at the plan view of this thing, for example, where the wing structure, it's just not quite in scale yet, but it's looking at the ways of looking at the plan view itself, then all of a sudden the upper brow, and this would be the docking module here, then this attachment that comes in and comes over the top of that thing and begins to assemble itself into the vehicle itself. Oh yeah, detaching the tail completely would make, yeah. I think, honestly, Chip, I think that's the thing that really, I looked at the most over the last few days. If we go the variant that becomes a delivery ship of some sort, that tail module is going to have to go. This thing would no longer be part of the process. Notice down below, I tried to marry it into that same combat piece. It just did not look feasible at all. There's something about just eliminating that gunner tail and putting some sort of module in there. And again, I think that when you'll see in a moment here, I think to do that, and again, with your help and with the Linear's help, to do this, I think we have to lift it up so it goes above the engine systems and doesn't burn itself up in a delivery. So a lot of little complicated areas to deal with this from a design point of view. And I think a good start here to get this thing, remove it from the actual combat tail gunner piece itself. So there's a plan view side there and what it might look like. Now here's a couple of little variations on theme. When you start to look at what this guy might look like, this is kind of interesting, where I've just started to put some ideas together based on, all right, there's the actual module itself, and the carrying, here's the docking device up on top here. Let me switch pans here. This is the docking device up on top, and then this would be the carrier system. Of course, what's missing here is the wing structure. Everything else would be carried over. Like in this little view, I try to show the same thing here. As well, where you've got the actual the cockpit itself, the wing structure, which is going to be magnified a little bit more, and then this attachment device with these storage systems. Very simple forms. I mean, not a lot of complication there to kind of get it to look like a barge or a floating delivery ship of some sort. So then when it's all said and done, this view might be right, but again, getting the right character. Notice the problem here is, again, lower and upper engine system. You've got this thing right in line, so this thing might have to lift. In other words, this view might come up and just over the top and give it a whole new look. That could be kind of interesting too. Would the exhaust get diverted to the center? Yeah, it could go that route. It could go through the center line. This could be actual hollow in through as well. Linear. This could be hollowed out in section, and then let that exhaust to fly right through there. But I don't know. I think I feel a lot more. With the exhaust, yeah, I think what I would like to prefer to see is to hold the actual carrier itself. Notice this little thumbnail sketch down here, lower, upper engine systems, and then raising it up to get clearance through that exhaust. I think raising it up can be kind of an interesting look at it to get the right proportions to work here. And I'm not saying, excuse me, don't misunderstand. I'm not saying at all that this is the final design resolution. I'm just looking at the possibilities of where the actual problems are and where the solution areas could resolve itself. But I think once we have that portion of it laid out, I think that's paramount. If we can keep as much of that as we can and come back in and lift this thing up over the top of that shape, like we're doing here, could have a lot of credence in keeping it, as you mentioned, Chip, like a barge system and Linear as well. As just a nice simple storage box or delivery system at the back end of this thing. So went from that into this, then I went back into some other variations here that are really not the same thing. Notice how it gets really complicated when you try to keep that gunner tail system in place. It just does not look right at all. Raised cargo would be necessary. I think you're right. Thanks, Chip. You definitely are right. So I think, notice again, I went back to that same process, a little bit of a plan view sneak of the wing surface and the actual cockpit area here, and then grafting onto that tail gunning system with the right and left hand. This would be symmetrical. I just happen to illustrate here the right-hand side of the actual gunning stem itself. The artillery stem, but it just did look, it looked clumsy. So when all that is said and done, I think we go back to something that does simply as simple as this. We come right back in and begin to look at this guy. And let's just kind of switch gears here for a second here. If I look at the module here, see what you guys think of this. If I come back in and develop a center line here, let's just do this. This is my center line. And then for what it's worth, here is actual canopy. This is going to be cockpit area, looking at right on the front view. Gunning system here. Notice what we have here now is a drop system here. Now we have, let's do this. We have a wing surface here, an engine surface that does this. Looking at it just in block form here. That engine is doing this, and it's got a drop wing again. So there we are. There's one system. Now down below, we have an auxiliary coming out for that looks like this. We have a kick deck that comes down below, and there's an engine. So we've got that module. Let me just kind of flare this in here for a second. And then we've got the cockpit hood, and we've got that little input piece that does this. So that's kind of a rough, pardon me for the real rough and sketchy look at this guy. So there's element A. We have this engine upper, then we have engine lower, auxiliary. And when it's all said and done, I just want to be real simple here. So we've got those two things going for us, which present when you go back and behind this, and then you've got this big saucer back here that becomes a gunning system off of the tail that gets a marriage into the shape. So that kind of raises itself uphill. Then on top of that, you have a really interesting process where you've got this dihedral, this dragonfly process that comes up and creates this upper stabilizer, this wing system. So there's a half process right there. I mean, look at you've got very little real estate to work with in there, and I think that's the thing that I'm really looking at from the point of view of solving the problem here. So, and again, last thing too, this is blistered, and the canopy is a rounder, and it comes back in and does that. So there's a lot more roundness in this thing, which is going to be really fun to work with. So my point is, maybe this guy looks like we're going to develop something in here. Let's go to red pen. Let's see what this does. Excuse me just a moment. Maybe we come back with an area here. Unless they remove some engines, it's not going to make much sense. Yeah, we could. That's true too. Prefer to keep the engines if we could, Chip, and maybe look at this. Let's see what happens when we did this. If we kind of come back in with an upper attachment process, it came up like so, and kept some really interesting, simple shapes up on top that looks like an actual cargo carrier. There's center line there. Now again, I'm not saying that's the final approach at it, but that might carry the weight of this thing and give it a little bit more credence in terms of keeping everything pretty well solvable and not to remove too much. I hate to remove some of those engine systems because this is a massive machine. We've got that thing going almost, 35 to 40 meters. It's massive. So I think we lose power. We might have a little bit difficulty with this thing. So when it's all said and done, let's just do a little shot of this thing here for a second, and overview. Just really rough it in. So we come back in, there's canopy, it comes up and drops off into the nose system itself. I'm just going to go real loose here. Now we're going to hold on to this. Now there's that grafting point. We come in right about here. So we graft it here, then we step it up. And this is really crude, guys, so forgive me here. Basic shape. And that sits above this module. That comes back in, and maybe there's a tongue or a foot system here that kind of grafts this thing in and gives it a point of reference. Let's see, let's get that hood to work with here. There's the lower. I'm not going to finish the shape off too much here, but let's just do this. It's that to that to that. Now if I cut a section through there, it's now this to a box section that does that. Pretty crude here, so pardon me for the timing here, guys. So all this becomes, this is still common. Here's my center line coming up with a brow. Here's the canopy itself right here. There's the hood. I'm going to come downhill just a bit more. Underneath, there's the base of the actual machine itself. Now off of that graph here comes this. We have this coming across, and then this steps out. There's my wing surface. There's my first engine surface here. And that comes back, and that goes up and breaks over into the main body surface itself. That's maintained. And then off of that, pardon me as I just kind of lose ink here, we still have this lower auxiliary piece that comes in and does the following. Now there's that secondary wing piece that comes off of that and begins to crank back. Pretty crude as we go, but that's the look we're going to get to. What do you think? Like a Thule, yeah, like root box, yeah, absolutely. That's one approach to look at it here. There's a lot of variations in theme to get there, I think, to a chip. But I don't know. What do you think that's the right way to approach it? You know, to get this thing open. Now, that could be a whole variation of themes here. You can actually come back with this guy. You can go to round surfaces. You can go to box surfaces. You can go to beveled shapes. But again, to keep it above the actual form itself, let's just kind of do this for a second. I'm going to go back to the sketch. Now here's the exhaust system coming off of that primary upper engine. There's the one exhaust run that kind of keeps that clear. And again, underneath, same way. So we've got a nice clearance here. Now let's go back from the main body form. That comes back in and just, yeah, maybe that carries right on through. At some point, just kind of tucks in underneath. Just going to put a little more section in this guy. Then you can modulate this guy to give it some indication of scale or change of connectability. And again, here's the base module itself. There's a wing strut, actual canopy here. Let's put that into place. Lower engine, upper. I mean, pardon me for the rude sketches here, guys. I just want to get a character established here, if this is even going to work. Then behind all that, there's a real solid body form that might be all fuel storage, or, as you mentioned too, Chip, troop carrier systems or cargo drop, etc. But it keeps that box system really easy. I don't know if that's, what do you think? Is that too crude here? It gets closer to what I was saying. Cargo capacity is going to be minimal. Kind of just attaching duffel bags to the outside. But yeah, that's a good point. That's an excellent point too, Chip. So maybe it's not as massive as this. You might be looking at something that's as simple as this, where you come back in with just a series of box systems over the top that kind of deviates and gives you that much carrier space. Again, with holding all these other elements in place. That could be kind of interesting. So I don't know. What do you think, Linear? You're in the same camp here. Any yays and nays? I mean, I don't want to overstretch the situation here in terms of trying to be too cosmetic, too cute, etc. It just really is going to come down to some very, very simple, interesting approaches here to keep as much as we can with the original module, like we did the original Manticore, and keeping that intact, and then doing a nice job of putting a cargo system together that's very minimal, as your point is well taken, Chip. So anybody else there? What do you think? Linear, are you still with us? Just commentary. Chip's got a good point there about minimal, and I think I'm in that same camp, and hopefully you're in the same boat. So let's kind of, let me just finish this off a little bit here. This has given me some great help, guys. I mean, I really appreciate you taking the time to join me here today, because it's been a real source of what do you do with this thing? How do you keep it nice and simple, functional, at the same time, all the elements that we've dealt with in the past. There's the engine system underneath it, that part of the wing surface here. There's an engine nacelle, there's the exhaust portion of that comes out and does this. And this all is part of that cargo process. We just developed this box system up on top. I don't know, maybe it's that deep, maybe it's a little thinner. I think the roof rack approach is our only option here unless we start moving engines. Yeah, I think that's a good point, Chip. You know, that's not a bad idea either, to move engines around. Maybe that's part of the resolve as well. I would hate to go that route because of the process we're dealing with here. It'd be nice to be able to keep A, the cockpit area, B, the auxiliary lower power system, C, the primary power system, D, the dihedrals, and then E, the actual module itself that sits up on top. So if we look at that, guy, let me just get a fresh sheet of paper here. Let's see if we can kind of go back to this thing again. So maybe that upper piece, Might have enough of this going for it. There it just crowns out, and it crowns out. And at the same time, it's pretty minimal. It's a nice thin approach there, and it comes back through here. And the rest of the body form is underneath this guy. Maybe that's where the dovetail is. And that sleeks underneath here and does this. And the neat thing about that is, Linear, if you're still there, you can have these doors for delivery purposes. They hinge. And inside that, you've got these storage modules. There's your center line. There's a storage module, so it's right and left-hand side. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You've got a dozen modules in there, and not forklift crane. There it is. Let's see. You can put it. Yep, in the same boat. I just stepped away for a quick moment, sorry, and yeah, I didn't think of doing a roof module until I saw the drawings. You can put the attachment point on the belly and have it carry a container from place to place. Forklift stuff, yeah, you know, that's not a bad idea. They're going underneath. That's not bad. So if you look at that thing, here's the upper piece itself. If we stayed up on top, that might look like so. And let's just do a little elevation here. Actual cockpit itself comes up, drops in, picks up that hooded device we've already got in the original piece. That comes back and gives us that wing form, and it kind of stops in there. Just there's the cannon process here up front, and it comes back to those hard edges down below. So maybe there's my approach here. Maybe this thing comes up. And sits up on top. And again, if I were to put this into real time, there's one engine system here. Pretty quick and dirty here. So there's the upper module, and here's the lower module. Based on the initial concept sketch here. So that might not be too busy looking. I don't know, that's pretty rough here, guys. What do you think? This is where we place that crane could take off the entire, yeah, that's a crane. Yeah, that could be a lift-off area. That whole thing could be removable. So let's look at this. Let's see what this is doing here. This is part of the process. Here's the module up on top. There's the body form as it goes through. Now, as it begins to meet the rest of this thing, here's my exhaust pattern here with this engine upper piece. That's doing that. So maybe this piece comes back and just picks up enough bone in this thing to kind of give it a platform to land on. That could be kind of interesting to look at here. Let me stop there for a moment. Any conversation here, guys, about am I on the right track, you think, with this concept above and below? Good point there, Chip and Linear, about the crane system. Maybe it does happen down below, although it'd be a little scary from the landing point of view. There might be a little bit of, that might dictate the fact that, let me just do this for a second. It's just a little thumbnail sketch here. That might dictate extending the cab down below and reversing the angle here on the entry piece. Maybe that slides down to ground for entry. And then that carries on. And we've got engine systems up on top here. So we've got one engine here, roughly. And we've got one down below. So maybe that piece could fit right in through here. And you don't really see it. but it's part of the jewelry. And then with the wings in place, you'd actually masquerade just a little bit of that. So there's that. Here's the module underneath with divisions, etc. There's the upper portion. Maybe we can keep that little bit of that uphill piece. No, let's keep it simple. There's a frame there. Maybe this thing just dives off. It's at a certain point. But it has a little bit more intrigue up on top. Maybe we change the sponson design. Put like a twin canard up on that piece. And the canopy itself. And there's a very crude here, pardon me, gang. There's a sweep back on the engine system, wing system itself. There's the lower module. There's the other engine system here. Comes in underneath and packs itself in there. And there's the canopy. Real crude stuff here, guys, so forgive me. Just trying to look at how to resolve this package arrangement so it doesn't look like it complicates life or it's overdone. Engine above and exhaust behind it. I don't know, what do you think? So far, am I hitting any areas here? Oh, strap it under the tail and keep it tucked in. Keep it tucked in so it doesn't get in the... Yeah, that's another approach. So you're saying, for example, if that tail module is doing this, looking at it from the rear view here, Chip, it's this. There's the gunning system. There's the saucer. This kind of flies in underneath it here. I'm looking at it from the rear view going back to the canopy. But that comes off of that stem and stays real slim. So it hangs. Let's do another sketch. That's kind of confusing here. So let me just do a real quick little thumbnail study here. So if that canopy, if you're saying this, it looks like, it sounds like you're saying this. It does this, 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 and it kicks up to that. We keep all that in place. And then we've got the tail that comes down here. And let's abbreviate the section here. Does this and this and that breaks down into the side form here. So you're saying, in essence, Chip, that does this. There's a cannon fodder here. So it does this, comes in underneath and attaches down below somehow, perhaps like that, where we have this real thin module that sits down underneath the form and actually does that. That's pretty crude, so pardon me here again. There's my center line right there. There's the actual shape of the actual tail. And this thing comes in and mirrors where those pieces are. Real crude here, guys. So again, forgive me for going really rapid with these sketches. I just want to make sure communication has really been a big help here. This is really, what do you think, Chip? Is that it? Strap it under the tail. You keep it tucked in so it doesn't get in the exhaust patch. You know, that could do it. I think you're coming back the other way here. Go back, let's look at this from the other view here, just very slightly. Downhill. Downhill. And then underneath this guy, pretty exaggerated view here, guys. So there it is. Gunning system, tail, section, comes down underneath, brakes, underneath, brakes. So there's module 1, there's module 2, there's the overhang. What do you think, Chip? Is that it? I think it's either that or the roof rack, or both, but it would be one or the other. This is kind of intriguing because, again, if you look at that, let's go back to this original sketch. What you're saying is underneath, almost what we're doing here is this little tail section right here, that little undercut. we take advantage of that and go a little deeper with this thing and still maintaining everything else. Now maybe, oh, you know what really would be cool is to take this down. Maybe the shape of that section does this. Maybe that thing comes down. Gunning module. Tail section. Maybe this comes down and does the following. Maybe it flares out just a little bit more. Comes down like so. And then just again flares out. With the idea being, there's a gunning module. I'm looking at it from the rear going toward the cockpit itself in this little elevation side here. That gives us the possibility of again, engine exhaust up on top is doing this. There's the upper exhaust engine. There's the exhaust there, and then the lower is down here. So that clears a path. There's the exhaust system for the upper engine system. And the lower auxiliary piece down here. Then we've got all this that rides underneath the actual form itself. That's kind of cool, Chip. Nice. It comes out and does that. There's a platform here. And this is interesting too, because now in section, these doors could open up very uniquely. So there could be a cut there and a cut there. So the doors now would go the other way. They would slide uphill for entry egress. Pardon me, it goes that way. There's my hinge pin, so that goes the other way. That could be kind of neat. What do you think? Manticore fantail, fat tail. Yeah, fat tail edition. That's kind of a neat. Or the fantail. That's neat. The fantail. Yeah, I like that approach. What do you think? Lenny, you're still there? Let me just take a moment here, a little bit of a break, a breather. What's the vote? Do you think we should go this route, or as we stated earlier, go up on top, or try a combination of both? I mean, I'm here today. I wanted to start the exploratory piece today to look at the possibility of where we are with some of the things we're dealing with. Is that enough? Let me see if I can go side by side. If that makes any sense. There we go. Just barely make it. How do we do this? Do we go with a lower carrier, or an upper carrier, or a combination of both once we get the surfaces squared away? The fantail, that's a Manticore fantail. I really think that's cool, Chip. Great thinking. Nice. What do you think, Linear? Plus, minus? And I think this approach could be really interesting too. It kind of gives it a little bit more of a stealth look. I like in the tail for smoothness of design. Yeah, me too. I think in the tail. You're talking about this one right here, Linear? Is that the guy, the lower piece? This one? But that kind of, I mean, that's poorly done graphically, but I think that's the idea. That would be the idea of keeping it trapped underneath the tail itself. I think that's really, I think that's kind of neat. Well, I don't know, guys, and on the right page. Yep, got it. This guy right here. So it's this look with that kind of appearance, and maybe not so cosmetic down below, but that idea. Fantail up on top. The fantail, that is really cool. I like that. Very good thinking there, Chip. Why don't you come in and finish up the sketches for me? That'll be great. Excellent work. Well, I think it really, I cannot thank you enough for just a quick segue here. What I really appreciate about this conversation is you really rectified and resolved the direction to take. Because all last week, I was just going through the whole fatality of, oh, geez, if we added this. I mean, look at the first sketch I did. That's a pretty good indication of how really complicated things have gotten and unnecessarily so. I mean, look at that. That's way too much information. Plus, once you get, no, yes, you can. You can draw a stick man probably better than I can. But here's the thing. When you look at this and you look at the simplicity of the fantail or the upper module, I mean, that could be kind of cool. Maybe under certain conditions, both apply. But my question is, again, to both of you, since you're being very kind and hanging on, do you feel we should maybe do an illustration based on a fantail like we did for the hangar version and also the attack variant? I think it'd be kind of neat to try that. I mean, if we get the right view and get all the things worked out, it would be kind of neat. So it's just a lot of fun to get the input here. And again, when you're out there on an island, as I was throughout the course of the past few days, trying to find some sort of direction really made makes a huge difference to have your input today, because it really clarified ways of looking at resolving the problem. And honestly, Chip, to your credit, and Linear as well, I didn't even look at this fantail process. This whole idea of running an undercarriage on this thing, which would escape the actual exhaust system, is really cool. Really like that quite a bit. Well, let me just stop there for a second and take some inventory. So, if we were to take a vote, as far as a preference goes here, linear and chip, would we go with that variation, or do we want to add that plus that to see what it might look like? I mean, I'll go through a series of sketches maybe in tomorrow's stream and start looking, get a good perspective, like an underlay put together, and then doing some variations on theme about what this this drawing, pardon me, this dropship character might look like. I think that could be very, very intriguing. So far, so good. It's really cool. Yeah, we could try both in some sketches. And see yeah, I think that's the way to explore it. I think very much so. Exploring that would be a real big plus. And I think part of the drama here. Let me just get rid of some of this excess here. That one. Part of the drama here is we've had a really good success with. Probably just kind of duplicate just a little study here. Engine itself coming out off of that form. And then really dropping that wing system down. This is real crude here, gang, so forgive me. Again, coming back uphill, and maybe that changes too. Maybe that's what it is, Chip. How about this? What if, Chip and Linear, what if we eliminated this whole thing back here, got rid of this whole gun stem attack system, and did this? Actually took that same approach, but actually floated this thing and did this with it. And we put a couple of dihedrals on this guy, give it some stability. Oh, yeah. So we have an upper module doing this, and then a lower module doing that. Let me draw through this thing for a second here. Upper, lower, and there's a break point there. So the whole tail system now becomes a transporting system up on top of it. How about that? What do you think, guys? Wouldn't that be cool? So we'd have enough information, for example, to get back. Do we need as much? Maybe we need enough munition systems. I don't know. Let's put a little bit of break in the wing here. Let's get this up to speed. So we see that going over. Yeah, I think that kind of marry in here nicely. And again, same on the other side. It would be definitely separate the two designs. Yeah, I mean, do you think separating it the linear in terms of, would that be a negative? Or do you think that'd be a positive? It would separate are you talking about separating the two functions? But yet maintaining the body of the shape itself. I mean, the cockpit, the wing structure, etc., the dihedrals. That's the thing that's missing too. Even with those dihedrals in place, that could be really cool. Look at this. Oh yeah, I think that could have some character to it, guys. Positive based on the discussions you two said before. Yeah, I think that could be pretty healthy. I mean, I love the idea of taking that whole area, this whole thing back here. That area, removing this as a gunning system that we've done before. There it is, in real quick little thumbnail study here. And there's the actual munition system here that we've actually developed the gun up on top of this thing. Removing that, but instead just doing this, opening it up, stretching it just a bit, and at the same time creating a dihedral back here for stability. Oh yeah, you guys are geniuses. This is cool. I come back under here, a little bit of a tail. That follows through. This comes down underneath and gives us a little bit of a ledge here. Then it tucks in underneath and follows that same format. Now we have this. There's a break there. There's a bin there, and a break underneath. There's a bin here. And this avenue right here, that whole chute right there, that area right there underneath in the toned area is the clearance line to prevent the thing from being an exhaust stick. Yeah, I think this is the way to look at it. I think, Chip. What do you think, Lanier? Thank you guys for the input here. I think this is really drop dead awesome. I think that's got some character to it. So if we look at this in just a moment here, we'll just do this. Hood, cockpit, normal surface. There we are. Dihedral. Gunning system up front. Lower canards. Exhaust. Pardon me, cockpit. Yeah, exhaust. Extending the cab here and taking this full rearward. How about that? How about we did this? So when the thing lands, that drops down. That becomes a loading ramp. Let's put this in scale here. Put a little guy next to it. There's a scale piece there. And then this, that becomes the upper portion. And there are the lower bins. 1, 2. Now we can add to that. Then, of course, what's missing is the engine nacelles that come off of that. Oh, man, you guys are geniuses. This is great. Beautifulness. Look at that. What do you think, guys? Does that solve the problem? Aha. Oh, wow, this ship is way bigger than I thought. Yeah, it's a good 40-meter special. It's going back. I don't know if I showed you I don't know if you saw the actual final. Hang on a minute here. Thanks, gentlemen. Just for your benefit, Lanier, this is the final we did in the hangar variation of the same. Here it is in attack mode, for example. There it is. You can't get a sense of scale when we're looking at this guy. When I put the first program together, based on, again, Chip's input and a bunch of audience individuals, there was a lot of bantering back and forth about getting design systems down. But this was the attack mode, but you couldn't tell. The dictation was a 35 to 40 meter ship. But in this case, you couldn't tell what the scale was. So we decided to do a second study and finished it up just last week on the actual hangar variation. There it is in the hangar. And that gives you a better idea of scale. Look at the size of this thing in terms of where we are with, again, human scale. This beauty is huge. But again, I think the great thing that has come out of this conversation is this, that we could keep all of this. Let me just do this for a second here. I've got a card let's do this. We can keep all of this information. That's not going to work. Let's do this. We can keep all of this information right here. All that remains intact. The winglets, right, the upper, the Dragonfly dihedrals, the wing system, the engines and stuff. Look how low that is. And again, if we keep the storage module up on top, how cool is that? So let me stop here for a moment, guys. What do you think about this little? What do you think, Lanier? There it is at the hangar variation landed position. What do you think? If you're still there, I really appreciate your input here. So there we are. Let me move along. I don't want to bore you to death there with any conversation that's not necessary here. But going back to your conversation there, Chip, I think that's an excellent point of reference here. This is kind of crude, but I think it begins to tell us what this thing might begin to look like, especially when you put that secondary engine in place here. Let's just kind of get that second guy in place here. When you put that into place, that starts to have some real character to it. And putting all the little pieces, again, we've added to it, the hooded area. But coming back off of the top of this thing, maybe that's the grab point we're after on the wing surface itself. Maybe it does that. And that's where it grafts. But there's something about that. Do we need that tail system? I don't know. Let's see what happens with it. We keep it on there. It'd be worth exploring, I think. It's really good. And I lost internet for 10. Oh yeah, here we go. This is what we ended up to give you some sense of scale here. This is the one that we finished just last week on the hangar version of this Manticore at rest. And again, it gives you a good idea of what the scale is. Here's human scale back here. Look at the size of this thing. It's a good 40-meter ship in terms of really punchy and impactful. Is this helping? That gives you some idea of what we're dealing with as far as scale is concerned here. And again, Chip, do you think this is the right way to go? I mean, take this thing out of here altogether. That becomes removable, and then definitely really keep the idea of this whole. It's a very crude little elevation study here, but almost interesting. And we kind of modify. Maybe this gets a little beefier, put some more bulk to it, and maybe it gets a little bit more modified and a little more intriguing down below with more mass to it. But again, that to me would be a great cargo variant. In fact, you could even take that same process because of what we're talking about here and open that up a little bit wider, then cut it back in. So we've got a lot more mass in terms of storage area. It doesn't have to be as thin as this. It can be a lot more massive because we can change the variation of the actual in the rear view. Since depending where the engine exhaust systems are, this thing could move out another foot or so, and these guys could still clear the exhaust. So really interesting stuff here, guys. There's again very crude sketches, but boy, very helpful in terms of putting together a really good resolve of getting this cargo ship to look like a drop ship without changing the overall character of what we started with this 40-meter special. So let's see, Chip's got a comment here. Yep, goes back to your original idea too, where you have some attachment points to lock the cargo. Yeah, that's it. I think that goes back to this, as crude as this sketch is here, Chip. We started with these docking devices. Now that that's changed, you have some sort of docking device. Now the docking device can go either inboard or up on top and clip into it here. And another way to look at that might be this. And I still think there's a lot of merit to doing this. Cockpit, hood, drop, kick up, down the gunning system, and the ground base itself. Cockpit itself, this to this. Now, instead of trying to abbreviate like a helicopter pod, we bring this thing forward a little bit more guts to it. Get that lower canard, and that secondary canard come up into that, and then we get that guy going. And I still think to extend that, to run that body line through there and extend this thing like we did in that elevation study, and really take maybe that comes down even lower. We take a little bit of underbelly in this thing, extend it, and then run it the other way. Just extend that even more so. In fact, even coming back the other direction. We'll have to see what that looks like, one way or the other. Again, the idea behind that is, once you put this in place, maybe there's a tuning device in through here that this thing locks into up on top, and that becomes your seal for the docking station itself. So there's a lot to it here, and again, these are very, very rough sketches. And again, my apologies for being so rapid with these guys, but I knew going into today's stream it's going to be a more exploratory day, a day in which, okay, guys, we've got the two variations down. We're going to maybe do another variation on this thing, like a drop ship of some sort, but what's its character going to be? So, boy, I tell you, big help here today, guys. You've taken you presented a very good solution to a very difficult enigma. Because I really did not want, and I'm not trying to be selfish here. I think there's a lot of work that everybody put into. For example, Chip, you were involved in this. A lot of work going into getting this vehicle to kind of have all the pieces come together. And I did not want to get into a situation where you destroy the overall essence of the actual form itself, just to make a variation work for a cargo system. But I could easily see this thing being back here as beefy as this, and just letting it come off of that tail section without the artillery piece and adding another set of dihedrals back there. That could really be interesting. So let me stop there for a moment and take a little bit into it. What do you think, guys? We have enough information to kind of put together a story for tomorrow? Start doing some really cool sketches with this whole process. Let me just put this back in order here. Pardon my hands. Let's get this up front. Something really, a lot of merit about this thing. That's got some real intrigue to it. That makes some sense, guys. What do you think? Wrapping it up here. Very, very helpful. Yeah. Look forward to it. That's cool. Yeah, I think we can iterate on this and make it. I do too, Chip. I think we get a lot out of this. And I think with, do you think, would you guys support, for example, maybe doing a third variation on the Manticore, doing a sketch from the rear three-quarter about what this guy looks like in the dropship variation? I'd like to go that route with it too, make it a nice tri-set. It'd be kind of neat. Very cool. Well, I'll tell you what, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here today because I don't want to be guilty of overrun. As I said, going into today's stream was a mission to look at how to solve this thing with your input, and you did so. This has been a great conversation to get that look established, and I can start doing some thumbnail sketches tomorrow on a little bit more, get a good line drawing set up, and maybe do some variations on the theme with the engines in place without destroying all the work we put into it, with engines, dihedrals, exhausts, etc. Great stuff, guys. So thank you so much. And please, if you have a moment, please visit my website at drcontrast.com to look at some things, some drawing information. If I know if anybody's interested in drawing lessons, please pass it along. I really appreciate it, Chip, and also Linear. And again, please drop me a note sometimes if you have things you'd like to have me work on. Maybe by the end of the week, this week or next week, I'm going to start moving into what I refer to as the next generation of C8 Corvette. What's the C12 begin to look like? What does that begin to do? Back to some automotive stuff and just moving some things around again, unless we have another spaceship assignment coming in or a ship assignment. So I'm going to start moving around quite a bit more. Architecture, transportation, some product work, and hopefully get back in some neat stuff with some of the Star Citizen stuff we've been working on here. So again, please drop me a note at jim@drcontrast.com. I'd love to hear from you. It's always great to have some input from you guys because you make this thing go. I mean, I'm in here kind of making a mess on paper, but you're making some great commentary in terms of guiding this old guy to kind of keep things within the rails and get a really good solution or series of solutions to the problems we're facing. So thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great rest of the day. And I will sign off with this because I think it's the most important part of the stream, and I really sincerely with all my heart. Really interesting because, guys, never forget to remember to dare to be great because you are. Thank you so much for the time. Look forward to seeing you tomorrow. I'll be live at 4 p.m. with some cool Manticore. And I'll tell you what, Chip, in closing here, can I get your permission to steal it called the Fantail? I think that is really a neat name for this thing. The Manticore Fantail variants. Very cool. Thanks, Chip. Have a great one, guys, and we'll see you tomorrow at 4 o'clock. All the best.